Welcome to meeting number 15 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Finance. Pursuant to the motion adopted in committee on December 16, 2021, the committee is meeting to study the pre-budget consultations in advance of the 2022 budget. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of November 25, 2021. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. So you are aware, the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. Today's meeting is also taking place in the webinar format. Webinars are for the public committee meetings and are available only to members, their staff, and witnesses. Members enter immediately as active participants. All functionalities for active participants remain the same. Staff will be non-active participants and can therefore only view the meeting in gallery view. I would like to take this opportunity to remind all participants to this meeting that screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted. Given the ongoing pandemic situation, in light of the recommendations from the health authorities, as well as the directive of the Board of Internal Economy on October 19, 2021, to remain healthy and safe, all those attending the meeting in person are to maintain a 2-meter physical distancing, must wear a non-medical mask when circulating in the room, and it's highly recommended that the mask be worn at all times, including when seated. Must maintain proper hand hygiene by using the provided hand sanitizer at the room entrance. As the chair, I will be enforcing these measures for the duration of the meeting, and I thank members in advance for their cooperation. To ensure an orderly meeting, I'd like to outline a few rules to follow. Members and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English, or French. If interpretation is lost, please inform me immediately, and I will ensure interpretation is properly restored before resuming the proceedings. The raise hand feature at the bottom of the screen can be used at any time if you wish to speak or alert the chair. For members participating in person, proceed as you usually would when the whole committee is meeting in person in a committee room. Keep in mind the Board of Internal Economy's guidelines for mask use and health protocols. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you're on the video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. Those in the room, your microphone will be controlled as normal by the proceedings and verification officer. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. When you're not speaking, your mic should be on mute. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. With regard to a speaking list, the committee clerk and I will do the very best we can to maintain consolidated order of speaking for all members, whether they're participating virtually or in person. The committee agreed that during these hearings, the chair enforces the rule that response by a witness to a question take no longer than the time taken to ask the question. That being said, I request that members and witnesses mutually treat each other with respect and decorum. If you think the witness has gone beyond the time, it is the member's prerogative to interrupt or ask the next question, and to be mindful of other members' time allocation during the meeting. I also request that members not go much over their allotted question time. Though we will not interrupt during a member's allotted time, I'd like to keep you informed that our clerk has 2 clocks to time our members and witnesses. I'd like now to welcome our witnesses. From the Canadian Mental Health Association, we have Margaret Eaton, National Chief Executive Officer for the association. From the Fédération des Chambres de Commerce de Québec, we have Charles Millard, President and Chief Executive Officer, and the Director of Public and Economic Affairs, Matthew Lavigny. From the Green Budget Coalition, Andrew Van Itterson, who's the manager there. We also have the Director of Conservation, Canadian Wildlife Federation, David Brown. And we have as the Senior Specialist, World Wildlife Fund Canada, Marine Ecosystems and Government Engagement, we have Doug Chasen. And the Policy Advisor, International Institute for Sustainable Development, is Vanessa Corcal. Welcome. And we've got also from the Office of the Parliamentary Budget Officer, Yves Giraud, the Parliamentary Budget Officer, as well as from the Tahini's Restaurants, we have Ali Hammam, who is a co-founder of Tahini's Restaurants. And members, if you were on earlier, you may have heard from the clerk. Unfortunately, due to an emergency, Miriam Abu-Dib, the Director of Government Affairs for the Teamsters Canada, is unable to join us here today. We're now going to hear opening statements from witnesses. Each of the witnesses, one per group, will have up to 5 minutes to make their opening remarks before we move to members' questions. And we'll start with the Canadian Mental Health Association.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Hello, my name is Margaret Eaton. I'm the National CEO of the Canadian Mental Health Association, or CMHA. CMHA is the most established and most extensive community mental health organization in Canada. We were founded back in 1918 during the Spanish flu pandemic, and we have 330 community locations across every province in the Yukon. We reach over 1.3 million people each year and employ more than 7,000 Canadians. CMHAs are independently governed charities that deliver mental health supports free of cost to anyone who needs them, from counseling and psychotherapy, substance use treatment, and youth programs to housing and employment services. CMHAs keep people out of hospitals by promoting mental health and help to prevent mental illness. As we know, our country is suffering from epidemic levels of poor mental health and mental illness. Each week, 500,000 people miss work due to a mental health problem. Today in Canada, 11 people will die by suicide. By age 40, 1 in 2 Canadians will have or have had a mental illness. That's half the people in this committee room. Yet only 1 out of every 15 healthcare dollars goes to mental health. For those who can't afford it, this forces people in Canada to spend more than $1 billion per year on counseling and other mental health services. And it costs our economy tens of billions of dollars per year in lost productivity. We all know that the pandemic has had a devastating impact on the mental health of Canadians, with 41% reporting a decline in mental health since the pandemic began. It has also hit the community mental health sector hard. The phones have been ringing off the hook for the last 2 years, with more Canadians needing our help. Our branches rapidly overhauled how they deliver their services to keep vital programs alive and accessible, providing cell phones and laptops to clients to ensure they could maintain their connection. When people with severe mental illnesses lost their housing, CMHA branches provided emergency shelter, some even purchasing tents when there were no other options. We're so proud that we were able to continue delivering. For example, across our 29 branches in Ontario, CMHA maintained 96% of its service delivery throughout the pandemic. Our branches have strained to meet the rising demand for mental health supports, but the needs continue to rise. And while there have been significant investments in community mental health since the pandemic began, it's not nearly enough. Our country has chosen Band-Aid solutions to what is fundamentally a broken, woefully underfunded mental health system. Now let me tell you about the possible. Making meaningful progress on mental health requires federal leadership. We believe Canada needs a pandemic recovery plan that invests directly in community mental health, not only to treat Canadians with mental illnesses where they live, but also to prevent mental health crises in the first place. In addition to this recovery plan, at CMHA, we believe Budget 2022 must address 3 critical areas. The first is urgent investment in community mental health. We're calling for a direct investment of $57 million for core CMHA programs and services. This would, for example, allow us to reach 10,000 more frontline workers at risk of anxiety, depression, and suicide, and support the mental health of an additional 10,000 people through our well-being learning centers. The second area addresses the housing crisis, which disproportionately affects people with mental illness. We're calling for a direct investment in 50,000 supportive housing units and 300,000 deeply affordable non-market co-op and nonprofit housing to make sure people with mental illness and substance use problems have safe places to live as they recover. And thirdly, we recommend a substantial increase in funding for Indigenous-led mental health initiatives, including doubling the budget of the Aboriginal Health Human Resources Initiative. Resources and decision-making must be in the hands of Indigenous-led mental health organizations, and we stand ready to support their leadership. From a budget perspective, these recommendations make good financial sense. Mental health supports keeping people connected to their communities, saves taxpayer dollars, and reduces the burden on the already heavily strained healthcare system. We have a critical window of opportunity to fix Canada's mental health system. Let's not miss it. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Ms. Eaton. And now we're going to hear from the Fédération des Chambres de Québec and for 5 minutes.
Alors, bonjour à tous. Je me présente.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Charles Millard. I'm President and Chief Executive Officer. I'm with my colleague Mathieu Lavigne, Director, Public and Economic Affairs. We represent a huge number of businesses across Quebec territory, also cooperatives, so almost 50,000 businesses in Quebec. Thank you for allowing us to talk to you about what we hope for from the government's 2022 budget. Apart from tax measures, which are, of course, up to the Minister of Finance, there are portfolios which have to deal with a prosperous, inclusive green economy. Among the various measures, we will talk about 4 major issues: the labor challenge, regional development, and others. With respect to labor shortage, this isn't new for anyone here. It's been a huge challenge in Quebec and in Canada, and we see it in all businesses in all sectors. And it's continuing to increase as a problem. We hope that the new budget will allow the Government of Canada to help us deal with this priority. There are certain interesting features in modernizing the EI program. There are also income supports, which will help people find a new job and which will also help them to improve their skills. There are a series of measures that would help experienced workers stay at their job. I hope that these incentives will be such that people will be able to stay at work 1 day, 2 days, or 3 more at work. This will help businesses all over Canada. Now, with respect to continuing the Quebec-Canada agreement, the PTERT, which is something which will be a long-term enterprise. Now, we've already said, and I'll repeat it today, we have approved the government's measures in terms of managing the economy. Their will to create supports for the Quebec economy. This has helped us keep our entrepreneur class, our social standing and community standing in Quebec. One of the government's priorities is to implement the conditions necessary for a robust economic recovery for business. But there are the possible tax hikes in years to come. Now, there are businesses who are still having a hard time recovering, especially in international tourism. We hope that the government will continue to be really interested in our debt-to-GDP ratio. And we hope that it will help to improve the Canadian business environment. Another issue is regional development. Now, all the consultations will have to be inclusive and bring in all players from Quebec and Canada. We hope the government will help businesses in regions in order that they can recover. We hope they provide the necessary tools. They need, there has to be a sustainable viability. There have to be structural improvements, such as Via Rail's new train. There will also be investments in various regional airports in Canada. We absolutely need regional airports that work, who have stable services. And in ending, I can't not mention the Canadian pharmaceutical industry and its importance. I think the government has a real role to play. The past years have shown how important it is for a country like Canada to have a solid pharmaceutical industry that innovates and that benefits from the support of our institutions. There was an examination of patent medicine costs, and we know that this is a problem for Quebecers and Canadians' access to certain medications. We hope that this will be revisited with partners in the industry in order to deal with this new reality. It also has to do with Canada's sovereignty in this area. Thank you very much for having invited me.
Merci, Monsieur Millard. And
Thank you, sir.
the Green Budget Coalition for 5 minutes, please.
Mr. Chairman, honorable committee members, thank you for inviting the Green Budget Coalition to speak to you today. The Green Budget Coalition, active since 1999, is unique in bringing together the expertise of 23 of Canada's leading environmental organizations, collectively with over 1 million Canadians as members, supporters, and volunteers. The Green Budget Coalition's mission is to present an analysis of the most pressing issues regarding environmental sustainability in Canada and to make a consolidated annual set of recommendations to the federal government regarding strategic fiscal and budgetary opportunities. As the clerk mentioned, I'm pleased to be joined today by 3 of my expert colleagues to help answer your questions. The coalition's 2 co-chairs, David Brown with the Canadian Wildlife Federation and Doug Chason with WWF Canada in Halifax, as well as Vanessa Corkle with the International Institute for Sustainable Development in Saskatoon. In November, we emailed you each copies of this document, the Green Budget Coalition's detailed recommendations for Budget 2022, which provides more detail, refinements, and additions to the recommendations we submitted to the committee in August. As hopeful signs appear that Canada is slowly emerging from a painful 2 years beset by the COVID-19 pandemic, it is now critical to focus more attention on addressing the related climate and biodiversity crises and shaping a world that is equitable, carbon neutral, and nature positive for current and future generations of Canadians and people worldwide. The Green Budget Coalition much appreciated the major federal funding announcements advancing climate and nature progress over the past 16 months and urges the government to continue to act to seize this opportunity to transform society to address the twin climate and biodiversity crises, to create sustainable jobs and to ensure enduring prosperity and well-being for all. Canadians want ambitious action on environmental priorities. The government has repeatedly committed to make progress on climate change, nature conservation, and equity at COP26 in Glasgow, in the throne speech, and in the mandate letters most recently. These commitments need to be implemented with funding in Budget 2022. In this context, the Green Budget Coalition has 5 feature recommendations for Budget 2022, addressing 3 feature objectives of net zero emissions by 2050, full nature recovery by 2050, and environmental justice. For climate change, the Green Budget Coalition is featuring 2 recommendations. Firstly, for an energy efficient renovation wave in partnership with the provinces of annual investments of $10 to $15 billion per year for 10 years, plus prompt action to phase out fossil fuel subsidies with a robust definition and to reorient public finance in line with Canada's climate change commitments. For a full nature recovery, the coalition is particularly recommending a $1.3 billion investment in a pan-Canadian approach to fresh water and permanent funding for protected areas starting at $1.4 billion in annual A-based funding and rising. For environmental justice, we recommend establishing a new high-level office of environmental justice, learning from a model already in place in the United States since the early 1990s. Lastly, in our document, we also outline a number of complementary recommendations regarding transportation, renewable energy, nature restoration, fisheries management, action on toxics, sustainable agriculture, and environmental data and science. Implementing these recommendations together would lead to dramatic progress in advancing a healthier future for Canadians from coast to coast to coast. To conclude, I would like to thank you again for inviting the Green Budget Coalition to appear today. We are also looking forward to meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister later this week to discuss our recommendations. We look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Van Itterson. And now we're moving to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, Yves Giraud, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Merci, Monsieur le Président, Messieurs les vice-présidents.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Vice Chair. So thank you for having invited me to appear today. It's the first time since the beginning of the 44th Parliament that we appear before your committee, and I'm very happy to be here as we deal with consultations for the 2022 budget. As a Parliamentary Budget Officer, my duty is to advise the government on macroeconomic and budget issues and to promote greater transparency and accountability with respect to the budget. Some of you know perhaps that the Act also provides for my presenting documents and advice on various issues having to do with the country's finances. During the 42nd Parliament, the committee adopted a mission that asked my office to continue to present documents.
We published our Economic and Fiscal Update 2021 issues for parliamentarians. Our report identifies several key issues to assist parliamentarians in their budget deliberations, and one of our recommendations is to amend the legislation to change the release date of the public accounts. The report also indicates that since the start of the pandemic, the government has spent or is planning to spend almost $542 billion on new measures, almost 1/3 of which were not included in Canada's response to COVID-19. In addition to this report, my office has recently released other publications, including independent cost estimates for cleaning up Canada's orphan oil and gas wells, a fiscal analysis on the proposed premium reduction for mortgage insurance, and a report that assesses the insurance properties of the Fiscal Stabilization Program. It would be my pleasure to answer any questions that you may have about the PBO's work as a whole. My office and I look forward to reviewing your suggestions on how we can best serve the committee and help you in your work during the pre-budget consultations for the 2022 budget and throughout the 44th Parliament.
Well, merci, Monsieur Giraud. Now we are moving to Honey's Restaurants, and I believe Ali Hammam for 5 minutes. Mr. Hammam.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen of the Finance Committee, thank you for having me on. My name is Ali Hammam. I am the co-founder of Honey's Restaurants, a chain with 9 restaurants in Ontario and growing. My family and I grew up in Egypt and decided to move to Canada after the Arab Spring of 2011. My father was a hardworking math teacher and had worked his entire life only to watch his money that he had in the Egyptian banks get devalued by 65% against the US dollar over the course of a few years. Inflation is a problem that's affecting all Canadians right now, businesses and families alike. Even though we won't see the debasement against the US dollar, which is also debasing at a fast rate, but we can see the value of our money go down against housing, education for our kids, a vacation for our families, a good steak, our grocery bills, and our retirements. I'm here to propose to the committee the idea of embracing a new technology of money called Bitcoin. It's fixed in supply, which gives it integrity. It's digital in nature, which makes it native to our modern digital economy. It's secured by energy and the largest computer network in history, which makes it safe and reliable. It's decentralized and not controlled by any one person, company, or country, which makes it apolitical. We're in a tough yet critical time in Canada, but I'm here to be constructive, not pessimistic. I'm here to offer to the committee ideas and positive changes that we can make to grow our country's productivity. Our leading industries in Canada are energy and finance. Both can be integrated with Bitcoin. Let's not focus all of our energy on trying to fix an old system. Instead, let's build and integrate with a new parallel system as well. With Bitcoin, we can do that. In the energy sector, we can sell the excess energy to the Bitcoin network for 30 to 40 cents a kilowatt hour. That's a lot better than letting it go to waste or selling it to the US for 3 cents a kilowatt hour. So let's offer financial incentives to energy producers to mine Bitcoin with this excess energy. With our finance industry, we can integrate all of our banks, fintech companies, insurance companies, and tech companies into this leading edge technology of modern finance. This will not hinder or hurt the old way we do finance. This is a parallel system that can be built on top of the old one to improve it. We can do this by providing clear regulations to the Bitcoin industry, better accounting rules that would help nourish innovation, not stifle it. We can do this while still protecting Canadian citizens against scams and Ponzi schemes in the wider crypto industry. The Bitcoin network is being worked on by the brightest engineers all over the world, from Canada to the US to Europe to Australia. This is mainly a Western technology, and we should all be proud of that. Every software engineer and Bitcoin company is working on making the network harder, stronger, and faster. And when they succeed, it benefits everyone on the network. Let's work on becoming the country that benefits from this global cooperation. A good country example that's doing this right now is El Salvador. They recently did everything that I'm suggesting today to this committee. They are mining Bitcoin with renewable geothermal energy. They have made Bitcoin legal tender and embraced the technology to help bank all of their citizens. Today, more Salvadorians have Bitcoin wallets than they have bank accounts. More money is flowing into the hands of local citizens than to intermediaries like Western Union and Visa that used to suck the country and its citizens dry. North of $400 million per year is going to the Salvadorians. This past week, an Arizona state senator proposed a bill that would make Bitcoin legal tender in the state. Florida, Texas, Wyoming, and New York are passing legislation that is friendly and inviting to Bitcoin companies. Miami is even buying Bitcoin on the city's balance sheet. The world is moving fast, and we should move with it. The countries that will move first will reap the biggest rewards. Let's beat them to it and make Bitcoin legal tender here in Canada alongside our proud Canadian dollar. And my last proposition to the committee is let's borrow $10 billion from the Bank of Canada and buy Bitcoin with it. Our country's balance sheet is in shambles, and we need to strengthen it now more than ever. And let's be honest, what's another $10 billion after the years of 2020 and 2021? Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hammam, and to all our witnesses for your opening statements. We are now moving to questions from members. We're starting with our first round. It'll be a 6-minute round. That means that every party will have 6 minutes to ask questions of the witnesses. We're starting with the Conservatives, and Mr. Poilievre, you have the floor for 6 minutes. I can't hear you, Mr. Poilievre. I'm not sure if your mic's on.
I don't think he's here, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Poilievre, I can't hear you. I could see you, but I can't hear you.
Oh, you can see him?
I could see him, yeah. Can you, clerk, can you see Mr. Poilievre?
Oh, yeah, no, I can see him here. Yeah, he's there.
But we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now, yes.
Okay, I've got a problem with my microphone. I apologize for that. Mr. Hammam, thank you very much for being here. Very interested in your story. First of all, I'd like you to explain how it is that you were able to anticipate inflation in Canada when all the so-called experts, including our finance minister, said we'd have deflation. Why is it that you, as a small businessman and an immigrant from a country which had abused its own money, were so much more prescient in foretelling the future than were the people who make all the big bucks to predict these things.
Well, we were on the ground when the pandemic started, Pierre, and the thing that we saw right when the pandemic started was there was more money going around than before the pandemic started, and we quickly realized that this is something that is going to lead to inflation, because just what if you look, think about it from first principles. If you have more money chasing the same amount of goods, is going to lead to higher prices. So we decided that we have to act and we have to move to protect our own money from getting debased. And that's when we started, researching and digging around, and we found a solution, a better technology for money called Bitcoin, and we were able to act on it. And the result was, a year and a half later, is it did protect our wealth, and it grew our purchasing power.
To be clear, what you did is you used the liquid part of your balance sheet to hold Bitcoin instead of to hold Canadian dollars. Is that the sum total of it?
Yeah, agreed. And like I said, we saw what was coming, which we knew there was going to be an inflationary environment moving forward. So we took our balance sheet as a company and we bought Bitcoin with it. And our reasoning was because there was more money flowing around. That's as simple as that.
Right.
And yeah, and here we are, a year and a half, 2 years later, and
what was the price you paid what did you pay in price for the Bitcoin?
Around then, it was like around $10,000 to $12,000.
Okay. And what is the price today?
Today is at like 37,000 US dollars.
So in your case, because of the timing on which you bought it, you've had actually about 60% deflation in terms of what the purchasing power is of the cash that you had, the money that you held on your liquid balance sheet. In other words, the price of goods in Bitcoin went down by about 66% from the time you bought it until the present. Is that an accurate statement?
Correct. And that goes back to the opening statement that I made. It's a fixed money supply, and it's not controlled by anyone. So you go in knowing the rules, and the rules don't change on you, and the money supply doesn't change on you. So
how much time do I have, Chairman?
Got about 2 minutes.
Okay. And are you taking Bitcoin as a source of payment from your customers when they come in and buy a shawarma or falafel? Can they do it in Bitcoin?
Well, I would love to do that, but the tax laws on Bitcoin is being treated as a capital gains tax event if I sell it or receive it or use it to pay my vendors. So that's why I think it would help nourish innovation if we make Bitcoin legal tender here in Canada.
All right. And you're still proposing that your customers should have to pay HST and that you would pay business tax on the Bitcoin you receive? You're just suggesting that there should not be capital gains tax on amounts used to make individual retail purchases. Did I capture your view right?
100%. The way Bitcoin is treated right now is if I send you, Pierre, $1,000 in Bitcoin, that would be a taxable event for me, and I'd have to pay the cap gains on that $1,000 that I sent to you. So if you want to use it practically in commerce like that, it wouldn't make any sense. So what we did is we just buy it with our profits. We operate in Canadian dollars 100%, and then whatever is left over, that's what we use to sweep over into Bitcoin.
And would you say that your family's history of witnessing a government ruin its money gave you an advantage because you were able to say, well, I've seen this story before when the central bank started turning on its money printer.
Exactly. And you know, if you do the same, if you apply the same money policies, we're not immune to an inflationary environment.
Right.
We're just like any country that faces inflation right now, whether it's Egypt, Lebanon, Turkey. If we do the same things, we're going to end up with the same results. So there's no reason that we as a country are going to be immune from this inflation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thanks for and congratulations on outsmarting all the so-called experts.
We're moving to the Liberals and Ms. Zarowitz for 6 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank all the witnesses for coming before us today. You are our first group of in our pre-budget consultations. And so I want to thank you for your presentations. Unfortunately, I won't be able to get to all of you because there are so many so many questions and so little time. I will start off with the Canadian Mental Health Association and you, Ms. Eaton. I'm going to actually continue the conversation you and I had last time when you were before our committee, where I was asking you around supports to how we can best continue to support mental health moving forward. So if you read the Minister Carolyn Bennett's mandate letter, in it, she is mandated to establish a permanent ongoing Canada mental health transfer to do what it is that you've asked, which is basically that we need to be creating a national plan to support mental health across this country. How do we do this? How do we do it in such a way to ensure that community mental health supports get to exactly where they need to go? And I'd previously given you the example that we had given $2 billion additional dollars in Ontario, but I'm not quite sure where it actually whether it actually got to the community supports it needed to. So what advice do you have for us to ensure, and for the minister, in establishing this Canadian mental health transfer, how do we do it in such a way that it gets to where it needs to go at the community level?
Thank you so much for that question. As you know, the federal government is the largest funder of healthcare, and that funding flows through the Canada Health Act to the provinces. So we were delighted to see the creation of a transfer that would actually put a ring fence around that funding, because we know when funding goes direct to the provinces, it's been very tough to actually allocate funds, particularly for mental health, and to know how that money is being spent. So the opportunity with the health transfer is to actually define how that money flows in such a way that it can actually go to organizations that can support people directly on the ground. We know most of the funding that comes through the Health Act is targeted for hospitals, psychiatrists, crisis care and support, whereas we believe that that mental health transfer could actually be defined in such a way that it would equalize support across the country, help support new standards in mental health care to ensure that everybody gets care that's similar across the country, and directs funds particularly to community mental health, where we know we can have a cost-effective and highly impactful effect on Canadians.
And then your second, well, one of your recommendations, I don't know if it was your second one, was around supportive housing, which we've heard loud and clear, at least I've heard loud and clear within the Davenport communities needed. As you know, our federal government has really embarked on putting in a substantial amount of money around rapid housing. And as you also may know, the provinces actually pay for the supportive element of that. So is your recommendation to say that as we move forward to implement rapid housing, that we ensure that the provinces step up to actually meet the rapid housing to ensure that that rapid housing also includes supportive housing?
We definitely understand that it has to be in partnership with the provinces if this is going to happen. But we would actually like to see the actual funding itself expanded to ensure that the funding is going towards people of highest need. So we're a bit concerned that some of the plans at this point are more directed towards the middle class in terms of expanding housing. So we want to make sure that those who are in dire need of support, so people with mental illness, people with disability, immigrants and newcomers, have access to high quality, supportive and affordable housing, which means massively expanding the actual amount of housing that exists out there. And certainly that could be done with the provinces.
Okay, although I would say to you, the rapid housing really does tend to be more for the most vulnerable and for the homeless in our society, and less for the middle class. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on that. And I do think that it is important to make sure we have supportive element match up with our rapid housing. My last question is just around preventative. Anxiety is at the base of where a lot of people sort of evolve into, those who have a lot of anxiety issues evolve into either later mental health issues or even drug use. And I wonder, from a preventative perspective, what is your key recommendation?
We believe the most tested and studied approach is cognitive behavioral therapy as a solution for anxiety. And our local branches offer CBT training. We also have a national program called Bounce Back, which is a virtual program that offers cognitive behavioral therapy. So we would love to see that very basic, simple, and economical approach. Bounce Back costs about $800 per person to deliver, which is very cost effective, and 85% of the participants actually experience a relief of their negative symptoms. So we would love to see that expanded through further investment in community mental health.
Thank you so much. I think I'm just about out of time, Mr. Chair.
That's right, Ms. Darowitz, but that was great questions. We are moving to the bloc. Monsieur Saint-Marie for 6 minutes.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président. Je vais commencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I have a point of order. In the past, in past parliaments, the committee would usually ask the parliamentary budget officer, not only for the budget, but in a separate block of time where all members of committee could examine the nature of his analyses. I think that this was a more appropriate formula. My suggestion is that it be such. So, hello to all the witnesses. My question is for the Fédération des Chambres de Commerce du Québec, for Mr. Milliard and Mr. Lavigne. Mr. Milliard, I think you summed up very well what you want, and I'm going to try to go into greater depth with respect to your asks. You said that the major issue was labor shortage, and you offered some possible solutions with respect to elders, to those who have retired young, to temporary workers. Do you think you could give us a little more detail on this possible solution? Thank you, Mr. Saint-Marie. I'm going to let my colleague finish, but with respect to a labor shortage, what's important here is that there are various levers we can have recourse to, not just one lever. We think all tools should be used, all levers should be used. There is immigration. I think that we're in sync with the government on this, with the Quebec government rather less. We think immigration levels are artificially low. There's also the question of people who want to transit from one sector to another, and we want to help them do this and get the appropriate training. I often hear, they tell me, Mr. Milliard, there are people who are retired, they don't necessarily want to work 5 days a week, but I think if there were really good fiscal measures, someone might want to work 1 day a week or more, and then this person can rest the rest of the time, spend time with his family. There's also the matter of innovation. I think we have to promote investment. Not all businesses will be able to buy the best equipment to increase productivity. If we have the right measures to make sure that businesses can go to the market and get the tools and equipment they need. So we're working on all these files at the same time, both federally and provincially and municipally. There are people who are saying that labor shortage is something that will be with us for 10 or 12 years. So we have to really talk about it and take the necessary actions to deal with it. Mr. Lavigne, would you like to add something? Well, there's also the issue of immigration and the issue of the number of people. This has to do with the federal government. There are now delays that are far too long for people who want to come to Quebec. These are issues having to do with the resources necessary to process these applications. Now, that's up to the federal government, but we hope they will address it in the budget because these are people who have already been selected, chosen. They have no trouble they would have no trouble finding a job in Quebec because we need them. We need workers. One of our proposals with respect to labor shortages is that there be measures to promote getting new workers. Right now, there are fiscal incentives, but we want all workers, no matter what field they're in, to be able to have access to continuing education and training in order to have the skills necessary to find the position they want. Mr. Medial, did you want to add something? Yes, well, with respect to qualifications and credentials, there are some EI measures that are helpful, but we'd like this to be done more broadly, especially right now. We know that now there's COVID, and we know that that's an issue, but how far, just how much can we use these measures? Because right now there's a freeze on EI payments, and we want EI to be depoliticized. We want the EI fund to be as non-political as possible. We want good governance of the EI fund. We want to be able to help people to qualify, requalify, and make the changes necessary. Mr. Medial, when you talked about people who were retired, I see, Mr. Chair, do I have any more time?
Pour les prochaines questions, merci.
Thank you, Monsieur Somebody. I did want to address your point of order, and this is we do have an unusual timeline. As you know, it's pretty curtailed. We have a short runway, and that is the reason we're trying to get in as many witnesses as possible through these meetings for our pre-budget consultation. So that is the reason, and I'll even apologize to the PBO, to Monsieur Giraud, but that is the reason that we've done it this way. But so now we'll move to the NDP and Mr. Blakey for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much. Well, hopefully next season an unnecessary election won't interrupt the pre-budget period, and we can revert to our normal practice of having the parliamentary budget officer have his own meeting so that members of the committee can spend more time asking him questions about his analysis. I do want to ask to the Green Budget Coalition, I know, or my impression coming out of your opening statement is that, obviously one of the really important priorities is to establish a program that can get retrofits of our buildings going in order to lower our emissions, because we know that that buildings are a significant source of our current greenhouse gas emissions. Now, I'd raised this in the House in or around December. I think it was in the debate on the fall economic statement, and I was told by the member for Winnipeg North, who's a parliamentary secretary in the government, that that they were already doing a bunch of retrofits, and that my exhortation to do more and to do more quickly was simply unreasonable, and that the government had already checked that off their list in terms of having a program to do retrofits. So are you satisfied with the current government's program for retrofits? Do you think it's ambitious enough? And if not, what is the, what more needs to be done, and how do you see that doing in order to achieve the success that we have to as a country to fight the climate crisis?
Mr. Blakey, I appreciate the question, your concern about retrofits and climate change. I'm going to turn to Vanessa Corkle, our expert on climate change, to respond to that.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the question. So first off, I do want to acknowledge that there has been a lot of progress on this file and that we welcomed the investment last year, both on the Green Homes Grant and also investments through the Canadian Infrastructure Bank. So they are unprecedented investments, but the reality is that the scale of the climate crisis demands a much higher rate of action. To give you some numbers, our retrofit industry in Canada needs to be able to decarbonize 600,000 homes each year to 2040, in addition to 30 million square meters of commercial space to 2040 per year. So this is an incredibly high number, but it's achievable. However, it is not achievable with the current programming, despite the positive aspects of that programming. Homeowners and business owners are going to have to invest $20 billion a year on top of their normal maintenance costs in order to achieve these goals. The good news is that if we do this, it's also going to generate an additional $48 billion in GDP per year, create 200,000 long-lasting, well-paid jobs in Canada, and significantly reduce our Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions from buildings by 90% to 2050. So this is a win-win file if we invest the right money into buildings. So we've proposed investing $10 to $15 billion per year for 10 years. And it sounds like a lot, but as I mentioned, when you're looking at the high payback in terms of both jobs and GDP, this investment is more than worth it. In particular, what we're looking at right now is that often homeowners are only able to apply to these types of programs if they already have a relatively high income. And often the program does not necessarily allow a home dweller, just because of how much is available and how much individual homeowners can put in to deep retrofit their home. So in order to meet our 2050 targets, we need to reach deep retrofits of all homes and buildings, not incremental retrofits. And it can also help with more funding will also help make sure that this is accessible for low income and racialized communities. I'll leave it there in case the member has other questions.
Yes, I would like to follow up on the question of fossil fuel subsidies, because we hear sometimes for those who oppose ending the fossil fuel subsidies altogether, they'll zero in on certain kinds of payments that the federal government makes, for instance, to Indigenous communities who are in a position that can only, provide electricity at the moment to their community through diesel. Either as a reason not to end fossil fuel subsidies at all, and they lump a lot of other stuff in with that, or in the case of the current government, I would say those same subsidies are used as an excuse for delay on ending a number of other ones. So I just wonder if you could highlight for the committee what the Green Budget Coalition takes to be the most pernicious of those fossil fuel subsidies, and what you think a strategy could look like to be able to end ultimately all fossil fuel industry subsidies.
Thank you. So first, I would identify that we have made two recommendations regarding subsidies. So the first is about subsidies as we've committed to under the G20. We made a commitment in 2009 to reduce and phase out inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. We also have a recommendation that's about public finance that's provided for fossil fuels. So currently, Export Development Canada provides about $13 billion a year in public finance for fossil fuels. And the report that was put out last year by the International Energy Agency stresses that if we're going to meet the 1.5 degree target and reach our 2050 targets, we cannot provide public finance to fossil fuels any longer past this year. So a key objective is that the government builds on its commitments that it made in Glasgow at the United Nations Climate Conference this year in terms of phasing out international public finance, but that we also phase out domestic public finance. On the subsidy front, The term inefficient fossil fuel subsidy is something that crops up a lot. The reality is that commitment was made in 2009, and the evidence in terms of how fast we're hurtling towards a climate cliff is even clearer today. Subsidies have become mainstream. When we talk about subsidies, we can debate about the word inefficiency, but the reality is that even subsidies for affordable energy distort the market against clean energy. So in our recommendation essentially asks government to look at every single situation where there's a foregone revenue or money being spent on fossil fuels, no matter the situation, to identify if that's actually the best use of public money. Thank you. I'll leave it there. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Blakey. We are moving into the second round, members. We're starting with the Conservatives, and I believe we have Mr. Stewart up for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for being here today. Mr. Giroux, can you explain to the committee what risks there are to the Canadian people to have delayed the audits of our financial statements?
Well, thank you for the question. So the delay is probably what you're referring to is probably related to the tabling of the public accounts. And the risk of that is that while parliamentarians such as yourselves were being asked to approve government spending for the current fiscal year, the government had not yet indicated to Canadians and to parliamentarians what were the total expenditures and revenues, and therefore the deficit for the year that ended in March 2021. So that caused you to be forced, or to be asked rather, to approve spending while still not having a clear idea of the picture of public finances for the year that ended in March 2021. So you were in the unusual circumstance of scrutinizing proposed spending while not having a clear picture of what happened in what was an extraordinary year for many reasons, but also on the front of public finances.
Thank you. Yes, I recalled a statement you made about the delay in the government's release of audited financial statements as basically indicating that it undermined parliamentarians' ability to meaningfully scrutinize proposed government spending. I think it's important for the committee to really take stock in what we just heard from Mr. Giroux, and this is why when spending bills are being pushed through the House, we as a committee need to go through everything as much as we can. But how much new spending, Mr. Giroux, has this government took on since the beginning of the pandemic?
So thanks for the question. Based on our own estimate, looking at budgetary documents and spending bills that were made before the House and the Senate, we estimate that the government, since the start of the pandemic, has either spent or is planning to spend $541.9 billion since the start of the pandemic, about a third of which is not directly related to COVID-19. So that's what we estimate the amount of spending undertaken or to be undertaken by the government since the start of the pandemic, so close to $542 billion.
Mr. Giroux, I appreciate that statement. So this government essentially has spent over $500 billion in new spending. That's like cutting every Canadian a check for $14,000 or sending our grandchildren a bill for $30,000 when we factor in compound interest and just inflation. Can you tell us why we have fiscal safeguards?
Well, fiscal safeguards are a generally accepted best practice, and these are in order to ensure that any government, does not embark on a path that would lead its finances to be unsustainable over the long term. And that's also why we release regularly a fiscal sustainability report that looks at the long-term sustainability of provincial and federal governments across the country, looking at the impact of current fiscal policies if they were to be maintained over the next 75 years. And that's to ensure that the debt level as it is and current policies do not make the federal finances and provincial finances unsustainable over the long term, meaning a debt level that becomes significantly higher than it is now.
Thank you, Mr. Giroux. Can you tell me what happens when these safeguards are ignored?
Well, when the safeguards are ignored, for example, when the any government embarks on spending patterns or taxation patterns, because it can be both, that leads it to register significant deficits year in and year out, leading to an ever increasing debt to GDP level. That makes it such that at one point it becomes much more difficult for the government to finance itself at reasonable rates. And eventually, if this continues, it makes such a government very difficult to finance itself, period. So that can lead ultimately to a debt crisis, which is clearly not the case in Canada, but has been the case in some countries in recent history. For example, if we think about Greece, where there were severe and very profound fiscal issues. So that is one example of something that can happen if there is uncontrolled debt to GDP ratio that's ever increasing.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's your time, Mr. Stewart. We are moving to the Liberals now. Mr. McDonald, you've got 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all the guests here today. I want to go to the Green Budget Coalition. I just something you hear often is relevant to different levels of society and how they can accomplish success in climate change. And you talk a little bit about environmental justice. Can you just provide how or what you would like to see relevant to environmental justice? And would it be an effect of different geographical areas across the country based on society's levels of income and so on and so forth?
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. I appreciate the question. I'm going to turn back to Vanessa Corkle on that one.
Thanks for the question. And we think it's great that there's interest in this issue. So our recommendation stemmed mostly around establishing an Office of Environmental Justice and Equity. This stems from our research internationally, particularly the United States, where they have a number of whole of government approaches to really make sure this is mainstreamed across government. That's also happening in their legislation. They've had an Office of Environmental Justice since the 90s. And in the early 90s, they through an executive order, they established an interagency working group on this issue. So we're asking for $25 million over 2 years in startup funds for that, a similar sort of office that would develop a national strategy on the issue and additional funding to keep that office operating, but as well as $7 million per year for funding to expand our data collection on the Canadian environmental sustainability indicators to better figure out which kind of communities need assistance. And there's also really great linkages between environmental justice and just transition. So if you have other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. You also talk a little bit about Health Canada policy in relation to developing further programs. How do we see Health Canada being involved in the programs that you intend to develop, or programs that are existing that maybe don't have Health Canada's input at the present time?
So there's kind of two answers to this question. The first is that in our document, we have included a recommendation for the Health Adapt program. So there's very clear linkages between climate change and health impacts, and these are expected to rise. So we're asking for funding to expand Health Canada's current Health Adapt program, which helps communities adapt to climate change and address some of those health impacts. Of course, there's also linkages to environmental justice as well. So I think there's some clear opportunities where Health Canada and through collaboration with this proposed office could support ongoing assessment of some of these environmental health hazards that are affecting, in particular, racialized and disadvantaged communities. So there's some great opportunities there.
Thank you. How much time do I have, Mr. Chair?
You've got 2 minutes, Mr. McDonald.
Yep. Thank you. I just want to touch on something that I didn't see anywhere. I don't believe I did in your report, and it's about green bonds. We all know that climate change is going to take more of an effort than just any federal or provincial or municipal government. It's going to be outside in the private sector, and I know that we have seen a major increase. They're talking about $500 billion in 2021 investments in green bonds, but so it exploded over the past 2 or 3 years. And I'm wondering how or what's your thoughts on green bonds, first of all, I guess, and how can we incorporate these into some of the projects that you've outlined, if it's possible?
I'll go.
Andrew, you can.
Yeah, back to Vanessa.
Like. Oh, okay. Thanks. I just didn't want to speak over you. Yeah, so I mean, I think the first thing to note is that the recommendation, our document is certainly not comprehensive in terms of all the possible things that we need to be doing, in particular with our financial system, regarding greening the financial system. So you're right, we don't have a direct recommendation on green bonds. I would say that our members are largely supportive, and that we've seen a lot of success in other countries. My institute has done a little bit of research on that as an aspect of sustainable finance. And last year, we published our Green Strings report in terms of how to align recovery and budget actions with climate conditions, and they're mentioned in that report too. So I'd say we're broadly supportive, but at the same time, I don't want to go into too much detail on behalf of the coalition because we don't have a specific recommendation on them.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. McDonald. We are moving now to the bloc. Monsieur Samari for 2.5 minutes.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for Mr. Giroux. In your report, you say that the supplementary expenses for the economic recovery that additional expenses are not necessary. Can you please explain? Thank you. What I mentioned in my report some days ago is that the government had committed to reducing spending for the economic recovery once certain labor measures had returned to their pre-pandemic levels. For example, the level of participation in the workforce, the level of unemployment. And in the December update, the government mentioned that the number of jobs had risen to above its pre-pandemic level. So contrary to what we had alluded to in our 2021 update and the budget 21, in which the government mentioned that it would reduce economic recovery measures, there is no longer any mention of reducing spending for the economic recovery. So in the last economic update of December 21, there was no mention of this. If the government had changed its justification for these spending, it was for legitimate reasons. But what I emphasized in recent comments was the initial justification that the government had for spending on the economic recovery, that they no longer seemed to hold, but that I also said that if there was a further justification that would lead the government to believe it's necessary to continue with that spending, that would have to be clearly stated. They would have to say that this spending is necessary for the following reasons. Also providing economic indicators, but it no longer seems necessary to spend that much money. Thank you. Mr. Chair, do I have time for a further question?
Okay, next round.
C'était clair,
Merci, Monsieur Samari.
All right, that's clear.
The NDP, Mr. Blakey for 2.5 minutes.
Well, thank you very much. Just back to the Green Budget Coalition, I wanted to ask, when you talk about an Office of Environmental Justice and Equity, I think I'm just searching for her on my screen now, but I think Ms. Corkle was about to offer some thoughts about how such an office could help. Obviously, climate change is bringing economic disruption. It's happening already. That's going to increase in the years to come. And we can either kind of wait and let that happen, or we can plan for that and try to mitigate the worst of those outcomes, not just for the planet, but also for Canadians who are going to want to have employment and work. And so just wondering if you could speak to how the establishment of an Office of Environmental Justice and Equity could help with that planning to ensure that that Canadians are ready to do the work that's available as the economy changes in the face of the climate challenge.
Thank you. So first, before I answer, I just want to give a shout out to my colleague, Lisa Gu at David Suzuki Foundation, who really is spearheading much of this work. So she's not here today. And if anyone has additional questions, I'm happy to connect later and connect you with her. But essentially, what this office is intended to do is to allow Canada to develop at the federal level coordinated capacity to do some advanced thinking on this. So I think it's safe to say we're already behind since we have these racial inequities when it comes to environmental justice, but we know that those are going to worsen as the climate changes and as low income and racialized communities are going to experience the brunt of climate impacts. And they don't have as much capacity to be able to adapt and have those resources. So, obviously a lot of planning will happen under the National Adaptation Strategy, but a dedicated office for environmental justice is also going to contribute to some of those objectives as well. Because it will help us understand some of those preventable environmental health hazards faced by these communities and assess the types of interventions that are needed to protect them.
Thank you very much. I think that's probably just about my time there.
Well, I've got about 20 seconds, Mr. Blakey.
That's
if
fine.
you want to cede that time, then
it's hard to do a lot in 20 seconds, so I'll
you are quite right.
Go.
Yeah. Okay. So we're moving to the Conservatives and Mr. Chambers for 5 minutes. Mr. Chambers?
I see Mr. Chambers is temporarily out of the room, so if I could take a spot and we can trade spots, I think that's the best way forward.
Mr. McLean, yep, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, thanks for the comments today, and I echo my colleague Mr. St. Marie's concerns that we're only having the Parliamentary Budget Officer here for a mix in hearings when we should have them for one full meeting, and perhaps we'll have a motion on that to make sure we get to ask him some thorough questions. But I'm going to ask the questions here today of the people on the Green Budget Coalition when they talk about things like inefficient fossil fuel subsidies, and I would like to know an example of an inefficient fossil fuel subsidies that they think is there right now that we should address, please.
I'll just go ahead. Thank you for the question. So our institute regularly compiles inventories of fossil fuel subsidies, and those are available on our website. So we did one for 2018-19. We also did one after COVID. So there are a number of measures in those documents that we identify. Some of them are direct spending programs, and many of them are tax measures. I'll focus on the tax measures because those are ones for which we don't have a lot of information. And there was an office from the report from the PBO earlier this year that estimated several billions of dollars are potentially being foregone by government per year. So these are types of subsidies that we would classify as inefficient and argue that they're a poor use of public money, primarily because they enable increased production of fossil fuels. And we know we need to be reducing production of fossil fuels if we're going to meet a 1.5 degree target. That's what the evidence shows us from the IPCC reports as well as the IEA reports.
Sorry, I didn't hear a direct response there about an actual program where we're funding fossil fuel subsidies. Can you give me one in 15 seconds or less, please?
Sure. So a good example would be some of the tax measures that we see from the federal government regarding, for example, the Canadian development expenses. That would be one example. There's also
thank you. Canadian development expenses don't exist in the Canadian fossil fuels industry for quite some time. Matter of fact, Catherine McKenna stated very clearly that fossil fuels subsidies do not exist at the federal level in Canada anymore. So I think you need to update your facts on that. We are looking for where we can actually do this, but I will point out that fossil fuel production does not lead to actual greenhouse gas increases. We're actually looking at fossil fuel consumption is the actual problem. And the more we penalize Canadian producers, the more we're getting offshoring of jobs and pollution. So we're trying to lead to an industry here in Canada. Can you tell me how you think we're going to do that if we continue to throw money at subsidizing foreign producers of oil and gas?
Well, for the first part of the question, we're actually advocating to reduce subsidizing foreign producers as well by asking the federal government to eliminate international public finance for fossil fuels. The second thing is that regardless of the term subsidy, the reality is that the market is moving towards a clean energy industry here and internationally. And in order to best support Canadian workers and businesses, we should be investing in industries that help support our net zero goal, but also allow us to develop and compete internationally. There's a large risk of stranded assets if we continue to provide support to fossil fuel production. And I'm happy to go into more detail on that.
Yeah,
I know we're short on
thank
time.
you. Yeah, I'd love some detail because stranded assets is a manufactured narrative. We're actually not stranding any assets. We're actually penalizing our assets here in Canada for the sake of foreign producers because we don't see the reductions happening anywhere else around the world. I'll remind you that greenhouse gas emissions around the world are a worldwide problem. 280 plants plus are being built to burn coal in Asia because we have penalized our natural gas producers, not allowing them to get LNG offshore to abate the consumption of coal. These are not subsidies. These are efforts that we need to be taking in order to abate carbon production around the world, and yet we seem to be standing in the way with all kinds of narrative around how we're subsidizing the industry, that we're actually moving forward. And I'll point out that Canadian oil sands producers have reduced their carbon footprint by over 36% in the last 20 years. This is significant on a worldwide scale. If the rest of the world moved in this direction, we'd be much further ahead. Let's talk about COP26 if we can, and the commitments we've made
Thank you,
there.
Mr. McLean. That's your time.
Thank you.
And now we'll move to the Liberals and Mr. Baker for 5 minutes.
Very much, Chair, et merci à tous les témoins d'être ici avec nous aujourd'hui. J'aimerais
Thank you to our witnesses for appearing. I'd like to begin with Mr. Media. Sir, you recently wrote about the transformation of the labor market. That 85% of jobs today will perhaps not exist in 2030. Can you please talk about how the government can make sure that Canadians and their employers, how can they be ready to meet these transformations? Thank you. Mr. Miag, I just went out, but I'm here, and I can deal with your question, which is a very good one. I'd like to get back to something we already mentioned, and this has to do with education and training, constant training. People have to be ready for these jobs. So the issue is for workers who throughout their career will be developing skills to always be up to date with new technologies and techniques so that when there are new sectors that are developing, they'll be more mobile, more nimble, and better able to go there where the new jobs are. So there's also a voluntary savings regime, which leads to, we'd rather that there were also tax credits for this, tax deductions, but there are employees and employers who get together to create this fund that will help these workers throughout their career develop new skills and improve the skills they have. Now, we have programs that are either compulsory or voluntary to continue their studies. I think if it happened in a more structured way on the part of the federal government, it would make sure there was continuing education and training, which is key to the future. Now, I'm not getting into details. I'm not getting into the weeds of the program, but that's the kind of vision that we have for all of this. Thank you, sir. Now, apart from what you've just said, and I'm going to read what you said to understand the details even better, but do we need to do something else to make sure that continuing training and education throughout a career, or even training at the beginning of someone's career when they're very young, in the school system, in the university system, there be something there for people to be better prepared, because we don't know what will happen in the future, what the demands will be in the future. Well, yes, in our case, the Quebec government has a program so that school training can be the best possible for training employers, training employees for the future. I think that there might be a financial support program for all of this. For example, there are apprenticeship programs for students. It stopped. The program ended March 31st, but we'd like to see it extended by 2 years. These internships or apprenticeships, because as you say, we need continuing education, continuing training, so these new employees could deal with these, could have these internships and apprenticeships. It could be internships. They could be dealing with real concrete work in a sector. So it benefits students. They are able to develop skills for the job market. But employers also like it because it will bring them, it helps them in terms of labor. And often these people who have gone through this continuing training can get into the work market right away, to the labor market right away. It's good for workers and employers. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. That is your time. We are moving into our third round of questions. I have the Conservatives up first. I'm not sure if Mr. Chambers or Mr. McLean.
I'm back in the room, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks for your
Welcome
indulgence
back,
earlier.
Mr. Chambers. Yeah, 5 minutes you've got.
Thank you. Mr. Giroux, thank you for being here. I would love to see you come back for an extended period. Wanted to spend a couple minutes talking about fiscal responsibility and perhaps benchmarks that we look at. In 2015, we were told by the government that the budget would be balanced in 4 years. Then we were told that we should be looking at a declining debt to GDP ratio. Then we were suggested, or it was suggested by the government, that we should really be concerned about debt service costs. Now it's unclear, I think, to the market what measures this government is using to determine when it would remove its foot off the gas pedal or increasing stimulus spending. With the labor market the way it is currently, this government claims, we've recovered most of the jobs from the pandemic, and the government also likes to point to strong growth in the last half of this year and strong growth outlook for next year. We had testimony from other economists just last week to this committee that warned against increasing stimulus spending from here forward. Would you agree that there's risks of continuing to spend?
Well, there are risks indeed of continuing to spend at an elevated level. There are two risks. One is that it risks creating a higher debt to GDP ratio. So it makes it much more difficult to return to a declining debt to GDP ratio. But that also depends on the state of the economy. So if the economy grows even faster, the debt to GDP ratio can continue to decline, even with what would normally be higher levels of deficit. The other risk is that when demand is strong and labor markets are already working at full capacity, when we have full employment, which a few of the other witnesses, notably Mr. Milliard, have talked about, then there's labor scarcity, and that can lead to inflationary pressures, notably on wages and salaries, and that can be transferred into prices in general. So these are the main two risks, and I don't want to spend too much time responding to that, but inflation and the risk of slower debt to GDP ratio declines are the two main risks.
Thank you very much. So just to confirm, in a simple basis, on a go-forward basis, additional government spending would have inflationary pressures on the economy at large, potentially?
There are indeed risks. It depends on the type of spending. If it's spending that does not create additional productive capacity, it can, and it stimulates demand, it can lead to inflationary pressures, yes.
Thank you. Have you done any analysis, or your office done any analysis on when the federal government would balance the budget, holding all things equal?
No, we have not done that. We have forecasts that go out 5 years, and over that horizon, we don't anticipate that there will be a return to balanced budgets, and that was before taking into account the government's electoral platform promises, which included, as we all know, significant spending measures as well as some tax measures. So the short answer is no.
So if not, and you don't see a return to balance over the 5 years, do you think we're at risk of creating what experts would call, perpetual or structural deficits at the federal level?
It's likely that we will have deficits for the foreseeable future, so beyond a 5-year horizon. But that depends on many things, notably the rhythm and the pace at which the government will implement its speech from the throne and platform commitments, and whether or not this will be accompanied at the same time by strong or not so strong economic growth. So we could be in a period of extended deficits, but that is not necessarily a fatal flaw. If the deficits are relatively small, they can still be sustainable if the economy keeps growing.
Thank you very much. And,
we hear a lot about 15 seconds, Mr. Chambers.
Oh, thank you. You did mention that the longer term in your fiscal update, that the public pension plan, subnational governments, and federal government sector as a whole does not have a sustainable fiscal plan over the long term.
Very short answer, please.
Well, in fact, the public sector pension plans, the QPP and CPP, are sustainable over the long term, but they're very on the cost. So they are sustainable for the time being, but small changes in assumptions could make them switch from sustainable to unsustainable, but that's not a concern that we have right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chambers. We are moving to the Liberals and Madame Chatel for 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Monsieur Giroux, juste quand vous avez évalué...
Mr. Giroux, when you assessed the various platforms, was there a party that saw a budget balance in the next 5 years? Well, I didn't look at party platforms. What my office does during an election campaign is, at the request of parties, we estimate the cost of various measures, but we don't look at election platforms in their entirety. If I remember correctly, there was no party that promised a balanced budget in the foreseeable future. Yes, that's how I interpreted platforms as well.
Coalition. I'm part of an initiative in my writing where we, together with, for example, farmers, we try to evaluate what would be a prosperous agriculture in 2040 and the green transition. I wanted to know what exactly are your proposal for folks in rural area? What are the biggest challenges? We've heard a lot about their concern about the impact of carbon pricing, but also there's a lot of innovation on nature-based solution, on diversification, on changing the level of crops and variation. So there's a lot of innovative approach that are proposed by rural economies, and I wonder what angle is the Green Budget Coalition, and how much of a rural consideration do you have in your approach?
Thank you, Ms. Chatel. I'd like to turn to David Brown to respond to that.
There's a lot that could be said there. So just to be very brief, I'd first point to, it's actually page 92 of our full recommendation document that's available online where our points are made. I would say our focus right now is on what's called the next policy framework, essentially the framework that allows transfers to the provinces and creates the spending from Agriculture and Agri-Foods Canada on enhancing our agriculture industry. And that's where we would like to see these climate considerations and biodiversity considerations tied in. And to your point, there are actually a lot of good win-win situations with agriculture and both the points you brought up, nature-based solutions, and this transition to a low-carbon economy. So there are known sort of cost savings that can be achieved, known payments to farmers that result in benefits to the country, sort of recognizing their stewardship of the land financially in order to make it basically incent certain activities on private lands, on farmlands. And if you look into our document, I would just point you there. There's a number of very specific recommendations around regenerative agriculture, supporting the industry in transitioning to a more sustainable framework. And the industry itself, we have good conversations with the industry who want to be able to access global markets that are asking questions about Canada's agriculture and how it meets certain sustainability and climate criteria. And we think that the Canadian farm industry can make that, and the federal government has a role to help them do that. Thanks.
Yeah, and if I may ask a follow-up question, there's a lot of concern about, as I said, carbon pricing. Is there any suggestion in how this will impact concretely the agriculture sector, and any proposal on how to alleviate some of the concern that farmers have in your proposal, Mr. David?
Not in the Vanessa. Are you probably in a better position on the economics of that?
Sure.
On the climate pricing. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. So we understand this has been a concern for some time and is not likely to go away anytime soon. Our recommendations, as well as recommendations of organizations we've collaborated with, like Farmers for Climate Solutions, generally support carbon pricing in order to send that strong signal that we are moving away from these fuels. But those need to be complemented by adequate incentives to support rural producers to be able to support their livelihoods and to be able to afford technologies that allow them to move away from fossil fuels. So things like supporting electrifying grain dryers, for example, or incentives to support electrification of on-farm equipment. So our document doesn't have specific details on that, but Farmers for Climate Solutions does. They have made specific recommendations on that, and that's generally a similar message for what we would say as well.
Thank you, and thank you, Madame Chatel. That is your time. We are moving to the block, Monsieur Saint-Marie, for 2.5 minutes.
Oui, merci. Donc, Monsieur Lavigne.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Lavigne, in 2.5 minutes, can you please explain your asks for regional development? Thank you, Mr. Saint-Marie. Yes, regional development is another of our priorities, and it has to do with infrastructure, because this is where the federal government can play a role. The first issue, which is truly important, is the improvements to Via Rail. And this is the federal jurisdiction, because in order to develop economically, this is something we need in Quebec City, in Trois-Rivières, in Montreal, all along the route. So I'm very happy that there have been announcements in the last budget for these developments. We hope that a part of the project is something where we'd like to see the entire project in order to see whether Via Rail will be ready to go forward with this project. But we have no questions about the availability of money, because we know there will be major investment in this. I think the federal government is sending a message. The money is there. It's reserved for you. We want to get this route in place as soon as possible. Now, we don't have to worry about this, about the availability of funds in the future. And this is very encouraging for Quebec's development. We know that at the present time, our regional airports, there's not very much happening. There's not very much demand because of the pandemic. But this is the time to invest, to do the renovations, to modernize, so that when the government really comes back full throttle, people in the regions, business people in the regions who have to go to Montreal, Quebec City, elsewhere in North America, they'll have the infrastructure they need. So we have our ask on the model, but I think the federal government really has to support these regional airports. It's something that is really essential. It's essential to maintain this level of funding to help towns and municipalities get projects underway. Thank you.
We are moving to the NDP and Mr. Blakey for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I have a question for Monsieur Giroux. In his report on the fall economic statement, he had talked about the importance of government reporting out reliably and on time in its public accounts, and had suggested Parliament might consider some changes to legislation in order to ensure that government does that. It made me think about some of the larger reforms that were talked about in the 42nd Parliament around the parliamentary process for approving government funds. Of course, there were some changes made to the estimates process at that time. I think some of what was done was certainly worth pursuing. There were other elements of that reform that were problematic. All of it kind of went away in the subsequent Parliament, the last one. There hasn't been any real follow-up. So when you start talking about, a better date for public accounts, it made me think actually that perhaps we should be looking at the entire system, which includes when the budget lands and the question of a fixed budget date, as well as when public accounts ought to be tabled on, and then some of the changes around the timing of the estimates that were considered a couple parliaments ago. I'm just wondering if that's something that you might be willing to share some thoughts with us on today, and if it's actually something that you might be willing to report more at length to the committee on in the months ahead.
Thanks for the question. It certainly is something I'd be happy to report on if the committee wishes me and my office to pursue some more work on that. That being said, I can offer a few comments. I don't.
Sure. If I could, just before you offer those comments, sure. I would just say to the chair, I am curious to know how we would consider if my request here is sufficient, or if we need something from the committee. If there's no objections, I'd certainly be happy to consider the committee asking for that feedback from the parliamentary budget officer. If there are objections, then I'd be prepared to move the appropriate motion.
Okay, I'm just looking at members. I think I'm seeing everybody in agreement. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Mr.
It looks
Chair.
like everybody's in agreement. Yes, Mr. Blakey.
Thank you. So if we could, Monsieur Giroux, for whatever time I have remaining.
Okay, so I don't envy you as parliamentarians having to approve spending when we have supplemental main estimates tabled before the budget, and then the budget comes after the mains. So it's very difficult for you as parliamentarians and decision makers to figure out where are budgetary appropriations and why is it that the mains don't include items that the government is introducing a couple of weeks later. These often are found in supplementary estimates A, B, or sometimes C. So it's very complex to figure out where is the government seeking funding for budgetary items. So it's very complex, and it's due in part because of the fact that for the table before mains, there's not enough time for officials to include budgetary spending in mains. So it's very complex to follow the money as you are asked to approve it. So there's room for significant improvement.
Merci, Monsieur Giroux and Monsieur Blakey. We are moving to the Conservatives, and Mr. Poliev, you've got the floor for 5 minutes. I think you're on mute, Mr. Poliev.
Can you hear me? You can hear me? Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Giroux, thank you for coming. You recently published a report in which you chronicled $542 billion of government spending measures, almost a third of which is not part of the COVID-19 response plan. So how much in new additional measures has the government enacted in the last 2 years or since the COVID crisis began that is unrelated to COVID-19?
So my estimate is about $176 billion, give or take a billion or two. That is not directly related to COVID-19.
Since which start date?
Since the start of the pandemic.
Since the start of the pandemic, the government has enacted over $176 billion of new spending measures that have nothing to do with COVID. You have said that the government has government's own guardrails, which it has set in place, have now been reached, and that there is no longer justification for a new $100 billion of additional spending. The chief economist for Scotiabank came to our committee last week, and he said that all things being equal, additional deficit spending would contribute to inflation. Do you agree with him on that?
I agree with him if the additional spending is not to increase the productive capacity of the Canadian economy. So if it's purely to stimulate demand, it does indeed create inflationary pressures.
So deficits can contribute to inflation?
Yes, they can.
And could $100 billion of additional deficit spending measures potentially contribute to inflation?
Again, if they're not destined to increase the productive capacity of the economy, they can create inflationary pressures.
Because they create, in that case, more demand without meeting it with new supply.
Exactly. So they create more demand in an economy that's already running close to or at full capacity.
Right. And obviously that capacity is quite weak. But it is the fact that we have such a weak economy and we're considering it to be at full capacity is really quite a depressing story. More dollars chasing fewer goods always leads to higher prices. Some are even calling that just inflation. And I won't ask you to comment on that because I know that that's not necessarily in your report. But do you believe that we can continue to go on adding new debt at this rate, or do you think that that it is advisable for us to get on a prudent path to reducing the debt to GDP ratio?
Well, I've said a couple of times that we could afford a deficit that was as high as the one in the last fiscal year, but we could not afford that many years in a row. So as deficits decline, that suggests that the fiscal situation will return to more sustainable levels of deficit. But it's clear that we could not have afforded the same level of deficit that we saw in 2020-21 for many years in a row.
Mr. Chairman, how much time do I have left?
Got 45 seconds.
45 seconds. All right. Mr. Parliamentary Budget Officer, we have had 85% housing inflation since the Prime Minister took office. When he came into office, the typical house went for $436,000. That typical price has risen to $811,000. Last year, we had all-time record housing inflation of 26%. Do you believe that the negative real interest rates on variable rate mortgages might be contributing to the demand that is ballooning these house prices?
Very short answer.
It is very clear that very low interest rates are fueling demand because most people don't buy a house paying in cash. They look at the monthly payment and they decide based on that what type of house they can afford. So lower interest rates mean lower, other things being equal, lower monthly payments, and lower rates mean that people can afford to spend more on a house. So yes, it is creating upward pressures on prices for housing.
Merci, Monsieur Poliev. We are moving now to the Liberals and Ms. Zarowitz for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. As we are engaged in pre-budget consultations, I'm still going to spend the majority of my time on that because I think we have such limited time, and I want to make sure that we get the best recommendations on the table. I do, though, I know a number of my colleagues across on the opposite bench have suggested that perhaps we want to have our parliamentary budget officer back to us for full sessions. And I just want to say I personally support that very much. As soon as these pre-budget consultations are done, I think it's very important that we have Mr. Giroux back to answer more fully many of the things that he has highlighted in his report that's come out today. I do want to mention a couple of things, though, that's important to mention because I do think there's a little bit of a focus around the change around the fiscal guardrails and whether or not we continue to need stimulus spending. It's important to note that as of last summer, we have, as a federal government, drastically started to reduce and pull back a lot of our supports and emergency supports. It's also important to note that even after we announced any of the additional targeted stimulus funding that we had, that we announced in the fall, that we, international credit agencies, still confirmed our AAA rating. I think it's further important to note that C2 also sort of showed that we continue to have targeted specific support. And as we could see through this recent lockdown across our country, we have needed it. And the last thing is there's a very fine balance between when to pull back drastically on the stimulus and the supports, and when to continue to help ease the Canadian economy as we're still trying to get through this COVID pandemic. And much of the money that's currently right now being spent is around the childcare commitments. It's around the aggressive climate change actions. It's around reconciliation, and it's around continuing to support our businesses and economic growth moving forward. So on that, I'm actually going to turn my attention over to the Green Budget Coalition and ask anybody who is willing to respond to this. There was a really wonderful report that came out around sustainable finance that our current governor of the Bank of Canada and before that, he had worked on a big sustainable finance report. He's made a number of recommendations about the importance of how to sort of bring in private investment to help to ensure that Canada achieves its aggressive climate action targets. So my question to you is, from your perspective, what is the role of private investment in our transition to net zero, and how can we as a federal government, better support private investment as we're trying to aggressively move on achieving net zero by 2050 and our 2030 targets?
I appreciate the question. I'm going to turn to Vanessa Quirkle again.
Thanks, Andrew, and thanks for the question. So as I mentioned in one of my previous answers, you will have noted that we don't have extensive recommendations on sustainable finance in this. We know this is a file under development, and we do have colleagues at other organizations, in particular Environmental Defense and Shift Action for Pension Wealth and Planet Health, that are working actively on this file. So what I say are just going to be some high-level recommendations. First, we really support implementing the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. A huge way to support the private sector is to ensure that companies are able and supported to provide climate risk on their investments. That will help them identify the right ways to go. Another tool that we have outlined in our document is under a section called Green Strings, where it's like how government can use its money to the private sector to support the private sector as well. We support encouraging companies to develop net zero plans in line with Canada's recommendations to be eligible for certain types of federal funding. That will also help kind of give an extra boost to the private sector to figure out and plan their investments. So those are just two examples that I'd like to focus on.
No, I very much appreciate that, Mr. Corkle, Ms. Corkle. That's very important. My last question to my remaining time is, to my riding of Davenport, one of the many recommendations and work that we're doing in sort of addressing climate change is our goals to conserve 25% of our lands and waters by 2025 and 30% by 2030. We're very serious about that recommendation. What would be your recommendation about our next steps to sort of aggressively really push on achieving this objective?
A short answer, please.
I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Doug.
Thanks, Ms. Zerowitz, for the question. One of our priority recommendations in this year's document is around providing ongoing management funding to protected areas. Certainly the next target and the next protected area is always very important, but we also need to properly provision the government departments and agencies that are in charge of managing and stewarding our existing protected areas. So instead of making these departments and agencies reliant on 3-year blocks of funding or 5-year blocks of funding, to build in permanent funding to ECCC, DFO, Parks Canada Agency to manage and steward our protected areas.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Zerowitz. Members, just looking at the time we have left, I'm going to divide up the time as we usually do amongst the four parties, and it'll be 2-2-1-1 in terms of minutes. We'll start with the Conservatives, Mr. Stewart, for 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Chair. Back with my questions to Mr. Giroux from earlier. I'm guessing if we ignore the safeguards we spoke of earlier, the credit rating will be at risk of being downgraded in Canada. Can you tell me why there is no more further need for stimulus spending past 2021, 2022?
Well, the economy is running at a healthy pace and recovering at a relatively fast pace after the severe downturn induced by COVID-19. The labor markets have recovered, not everywhere and not in every single sector, but if we look at the labor market in aggregate, the number of jobs is higher now than it was at the start of the pandemic or just before the pandemic. The participation rate is very close, if not at its pre-pandemic level. And the same goes for the number of hours worked. If it's not at its level or slightly above, it will soon be. So that's probably why the need for economic stimulus with the purpose of returning the economic activity back to its pre-pandemic level is probably no longer necessary or will no longer be necessary. But as I've said before, it's the prerogative of the government to spend if it has other policy objectives in mind. And that's not what I'm commenting on. I was commenting on the need for economic stimulus to stimulate demand and return to pre-pandemic levels of employment.
Thank you, Mr.
20 seconds.
When government prints this much money, it will always contribute to higher inflation in Canada. That's just inflation.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Stewart. We're now moving to the Liberals and Mr. McDonald for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Just a quick question to Mr. Giroux. Has your office done any analysis or forecasts on the $10 a day child care relevant to the economy or labor force by any chance?
We are in the process of doing that. It's not completed yet, but we are looking at that issue, and we're hoping to be in a position to release a report before the end of the fiscal year, so before the end of March.
Thank you very much. And I want to move on to Canadian mental health again, and I want to go back to Ms. Derowitz's initial questions. And sometimes I feel that the local associations do get frustrated when they hear the transfers of mental health transfers to the provinces, but don't always necessarily see where it's coming from or how it gets built into their core budgets. How important is direct mental health funding, and what impediments can we overcome as a government to ensure that the local associations have direct access to this funding?
Thank you so much. It's a growing imperative. We know that the provincial governments in some provinces have taken some of that federal money and it has trickled down to some of our community organizations. But the need is great, and even some of our largest CMHAs, like Waterloo Wellington in Ontario, for example, talk about the fact that even with their budget, they cannot meet the need, particularly for issues like eating disorders and substance use, which have grown extraordinarily through the pandemic. So if we want to get our country moving again, we have to make sure that people's mental health is addressed, not just in the short term, but for the longer term as well. We're quite concerned that the impact on mental health that we see is going to grow over time, even as the country starts to open up, as the pandemic comes to a slow close.
Thank
you. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you. And Mr. McDonald, moving to the block, and Monsieur Samari for a minute-ish.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lavigne explained his asks with respect to infrastructure and the pharmaceutical industry. Can you talk about this? Well, in 2 minutes, if I can resume quickly, the pandemic showed that we need a proper supply in Canada and Quebec, a supply of pharmaceutical products here and a strong industry here. There is the price of patented medication has over the past few years been something that was studied earlier. It hasn't been studied in light of the realities today. It's not just reformed. We need everything has to be rethought. We're conscious of the fact that we need to make our pharmaceutical products here, especially if there's a crisis, and we need a supply. So I think we need a review so that we can set pharmaceutical prices here. I think we would really profit by a review in this area. Thank you.
And now to the NDP, and Mr. Blakey, you'll have our last questions for this session.
Thank you very much. Ms. Eaton, we hear a lot from the government about the National Housing Strategy, but we know that in over 6 years, we haven't really made a dent in terms of what we need to accomplish. And we also know that despite they're talking about affordable housing, it's that how that's defined doesn't actually mean that many people who are in dire housing need can access what's being built under the program. So I'm just wondering if in 30 seconds you can give us the broad strokes of what really needs to change about the National Housing Strategy in order to serve the folks that you're here to advocate for today.
Thank you for that. Housing is a dire issue. And as you know, there's tremendous stigma against people with mental illness, which means that many of them are on disability and struggling to make ends meet. So the housing that we provide through CMHAs locally has been incredibly important to maintain dignity and to support their recovery. The National Housing Strategy, we're all delighted to see, but we know that there needs to be greater action and there needs to be more speed, especially now. So what we would like to see is clearer implementation plans and more direct allocation of that funding so that we can actually see perhaps not even investment necessarily in whole new buildings being built, but creative strategies to find infill housing, the purchase of particular units or condos for these purposes, different ways of getting at this problem than just putting up brand new buildings, which we know can be so difficult and expensive. So a creative implementation strategy.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Blakey. Thank you to the witnesses on behalf of the members of the committee, the clerk, the analysts, the interpreters, the staff, everybody. We thank you for your submissions, for your opening remarks, as well as for all the answers that you've provided to us here today. So thank you. And on that, just before we adjourn, I do need the members' attention quickly. We did submit, or you should have received, 2 budgets for our committee, and in terms of that we need approval on today. That's the inflation study as well as the pre-budget consultation study. I'm just looking to all members if we have approval of those 2 budgets. Okay, I'm seeing everybody's shaking their heads in the right direction. Okay, clerk. So we have approval of those budgets, and on that, I'm going to ask for adjournment. Look to the members again, and look to adjourn. Great. Have a wonderful day. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.